Do you think it's a part of the reason is that Ebola itself has changed? There's a new strain?
You've never had this many number of people affected. So the possibility of the virus actually changing is much larger now than it has ever been, right? Given the high rates of, the high levels of infections that has caused.
Has the virus achieved a large enough human reservoir pool so that it can now come up purely statistically with variants that are more virulent for humans, for example, more easily transmissible, and so on. The possibility certainly, statistically speaking, exists. There's no question about that. It's useful to remember that the virus has existed, as far as we can tell, for a very long time amongst gorillas and chimpanzees. So clearly, the diversification of the virus sort of strains in a non-human primate reservoir has been going on for a while. That doesn't negate Amit's point about the fact that with the number of cases that we are dealing with and the numbers of projections we are dealing with, there is an increasingly reasonable statistical chance that variants with altered clinical behavior
Might emerge.
are quite likely to emerge. Will they be successful? Will they cause public measurable differences in the scale and trajectory of the public health problem? It's hard to say, because these are not pre-planned or programmed events. They are random events in a sense. So far, over the past 6 months, there is no basis for us to think, with the limited information that we have. It is 100 virus genome sequence, but that's still limited information. But in that, there is no evidence that there has been any what geneticists would call purifying selection in favor of certain strains of viruses. And that says that we are not seeing this phenomenon happening so far. That provides no guarantees for the future.
Something seems to be missing in terms of how relatively easily the virus seems to be transmitted from one to the other, given the fact that even till date, the conventional wisdom is that you need very close contact, in fact exchange of body fluids for transmission to take place. So, how does that square up with the kind of transmission rates that we are apparently seeing?
Right. This has always been a problem with Ebola. Ever since we discovered Ebola in the 70s, we've been aware that it doesn't spread as easily as, say, influenza does. We know that body fluids are required, but we really don't know what the exact mechanism is and what the bottlenecks are when Ebola is transmitted from one person to another. And as a result, all our understanding of transmission is epidemiological. It's not biological. And as a result, it's impossible to answer the second question that Amit asked, which is, what is our current model for how is it transmitted? We don't know. We are then forced back into extremely imprecise statistical calculations based on epidemiology that transmission rates don't seem to have altered dramatically. But the problem with that is, and I'm making this argument to support Amit's concern, the problem with that is uncertainties in the calculations of those rates are so much that you could vary the rates quite a bit without going off.
Yeah, I mean the calculations that we are using at the moment are based on earlier epidemics, which at most affected, say, about 300 people.
But do we have a good biological accessible handle for elucidating mechanisms further? I must confess that I cannot easily think of one. So we are I think forced on relying on cultural epidemiology for the current epidemic, at least as far as I can tell.